Okay, so this is the Easter 2019 Maths Paper 1 Higher Tier. We're going to look at the first question here. So we've got Harriet reads 8 books. For each book she recorded the number of pages and the time she takes to read it. The scatter graph shows the information about her results. So as soon as I see a scatter graph, I'm going to want to try and draw a line of best fit. So generally what I would be doing there is drawing a oval around the points, and then if I try and cut that oval in half, that would be my line of best fit. Okay, so describe the relationship, that's quite a key word in this, between the number of pages in a book and the time Harriet takes to read it. So because it's going up, it's got positive correlation, but it's asking for the relationship, so that's the relationship between the number of pages and the time in hours. So we'd be saying as the number of pages increases, the time taken also increases. Okay, so if that was negative, it would be as one increases, the other decreases. So for the next bit, we've got estimate the time it takes Harriet to read it if she's reading 150 pages. So what we'd be doing there is we'd be going up from 150 and then across. Okay, so roughly that's about 7 and the unit being hours. Okay, on to question 2. So if we look at that first question there, we've got on the grid above reflect shape A in the line x equals -1. So the first thing I need to do is draw that line. So this is the x-axis, -1 is there. So if I put my dash and then if I complete the line, so x equals -1 is that line. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take each point and move it to the other side of that line. So this point is 2 squares away from the line, so it needs to go 2 squares to that side. This point is 2 squares from the line, so it goes to there. 4 for that point to the line, so 4 going that way. Again 4 to there, and the final point is 5 away, so if I go 5, I end up there. So then we're joining those up. Okay. The next question, we've got a transformation. It has to describe fully the single transformation, so we can't use more than one movement. So there's 4 different types of transformation. We've got a translation, we've got enlargements, rotations, and reflections. So we have to decide which of those describes what's happened here. So in this case we're going from shape P to shape Q, so it's a movement around there, so it's a translation, so that's the word I'd be using. And then in terms of this one, we pick a point on shape P, pick the corresponding point on shape Q and count how I get from there to there. So we've gone across 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've gone 6 left, and then I've gone 1 down. In terms of writing that as a vector, that would be -6, -1. Okay. Question 3. So Peter, Tarish and Ben share £54, so that's the total. We've got Tarish gets 3 times as much as Peter and Ben gets twice as much money as Tarish. So if Peter gets X pounds, Tarish is going to get 3x and Ben gets twice as much money as Tarish, so he's going to get 6x. How much money does Ben get? So first of all, we know that x plus 3x plus 6x equals 10x, and that total equals £54. So that means that x equals £5.40. Right, at this point we'd look back at the question, how much money does Ben get? Ben is the 6x. So at that point I'm doing 6 times £5.40. Okay, so if I'm multiplying by a decimal, I'd take out the decimal, so I'd do 54 times 6. 4 times 6 is 24, carry the 2. 5 times 6 is 30, add the 2 is 32. So we know it's going to have the digits 3, 2, 4 in. And then because I've divided 54 by 10, I need to divide my answer by 10, so it's £32.4 or £32.40. Question 4. We've got 4xy to the 8 cubed. So that means I'm cubing everything. So I've got 4 cubed, I've got x cubed, and I've got y to the 8 cubed. If I cube the 4, I get 64. If I cube the x, I've got x cubed, and y to the 8 cubed. Using my index laws, I'm multiplying those, so it's y to the 24. And that would be my final answer. Finally on that page, number 5, 380 is a product of primes. So I'm looking at what I multiply to make 380. Now I could do 2 and 190, but to make the numbers a lot smaller, a lot quicker, because it's got a 0 at the end, I know it's in the 10 times table, so I'm going to write 10 and 38. 10 is 2 and 5. Both of those are primes, so I circle them. 38 is 2 and 19. Again, I'm going to circle them. So that's 2 times 2 times 5 times 19. And then it's always worth writing this in a power form. So we've got 2 squared times 5 times 19. Okay. Number 6. So the diagram shows the cross-section of a solid prism. The length of the prism is 2 meters. The prism is made from metal. The density of the metal is 8 grams per centimeters cubed. Work out the mass of the prism. So if we sort of split this up into different sections, the diagram shows the cross-section of a solid prism, and the length of the prism is 2 meters. Okay, so first thing I'm going to be able to do from that is work out the volume. Okay, it's a prism. So the volume equals the cross-sectional area times by the length. So I need to work out that cross-sectional area, so I'm going to split my shape in two. Length and width of that rectangle is 2 and 7, so 2 times 7 is 14. This one, it's 7 going all the way across, that bit's 2, so that must be 5, so 5 times 2 is 10. So we've got 14 times 10, which is 140 centimetre squared. We're then timesing that by the length. So we've got 140 times by, in this case, the length of the prism is 2 meters, so I'm going to times that by 200 because we need it all in the same unit. Everything else is in centimeters. So if I do 14 times 2, that's 28. Then I'm times it by 10 and 100, so times by 1,000. So we've got 28,000 centimeters cubed. Then we've got our density, mass, volume. So that's our triangle there. So we're trying to find out the mass. So the mass will equal the density times the volume. So we've got 8 times 28,000. Before I do it, it's worth just double checking that I've got the correct unit. So density is in grams per centimetre cubed. So I need to make sure that my volume is in centimetres cubed. So 8 times 28, if I'm not sure, again, I'm just going to do my multiplication. So 8 times 8 is 64, so 4 carry the 6. 2 times 8 is 16, add 6 is 22. So we've got 224, and then timesing that by 1,000. So that's how many grams the prism weighs. It might be more sensible to write that as 224 kilograms. And that would be our final answer there. Okay. So, number 7. The table shows the information about the weight in kilograms of 100 boxes. So we've got 0 to 4, 10, 4 to 8, 17, 8 to 12, 28, 12 to 16, 25, 16 to 20, 20. So if we've got 100 boxes, the middle boxes, if they were all lined up from 1 to 100, would be the 50th and the 51st. If I was unsure about that, you do 100 plus 1 and half it, and we get 50.5. So that's how I know it's the 50th and the 51st. Then if we keep a running total, in the first group I've got 10. Once the second group is finished, I've got 10 plus 17, so I've got 27. At the end of the next group, I've got 27 plus 28, so that would be 55. I can stop at that point because that must mean that the 50th and 51st person is in the 8 to 12 group. So my median lies in the interval 8 to 12. Okay. A frequency polygon is a straight line graph, and the key here is getting the correct x value. So if I've got 0 to 4, I want to do the middle of that group, so I'm going to go 2 and 10 and put my cross. The next one, 4 to 8, the middle of that is 6, and then up to 17. Just be careful there with the axes because we've gone 15 to 20 and 10 squares, so every 2 squares represents 1. So if I'm at 15, I'm going to go up 4 squares, and that's my next point. The next one is at 10, 28. So if I go to 25 and then go up 6 squares, that's where my point is. The next one is at 14, the middle of 12 and 16, and up to 25. And the final one, 16 to 20, the middle of that's 18, and up to 20. Okay, I'm then going to join those up in straight lines. Okay, a couple of things with this question. You do not need a line carrying on. You don't need a line carrying on down to 0, and you definitely don't need a line connecting these to create a shape, because sometimes people think. Okay, we're now looking at question 8. Just zoom in a bit there. So factorise 2xy squared minus 4x squared y. So first of all, I'm looking, is it a quadratic that I'm trying to factorise? So is it 2 brackets or is it a single bracket? So in this case, it's going to be a single bracket. It's not in the form of something x squared plus something x minus number, and it's not a difference of 2 squares. So in this case, I'm looking at the numbers. What's the highest common factor of 2 and 4? The answer is 2. We've got an x in both of these, and we've got a y in both of these. So that goes on the outside. Then I'm thinking, what do I times 2xy by to get 2xy squared? The answer has been y. And then what do I times 2xy by to get 4x squared y? The answer would be 2x. And we've got a minus there. Okay, moving on to the next one. So we've got 9 minus 9x squared. Now, what I'd be looking at here is the fact that I've got an x squared, but I've also got a square value, another square value, and it's minus. Okay, so that's all the clues for a difference of 2 squares. So if I've got a squared minus b squared, that can be written as a plus b, a minus b. So in this case, my a is 9, so the square root of that is 3. So I'm going to have 3, and then the square root of 9x squared would be 3x. And then I've got 1 plus and 1 minus. Okay. 9a. we've got work out 1 2/3 divided by 5/6. So if I'm timesing or dividing, I need to write these as improper fractions. So 1 2/3, I can do 1 times 3 is 3, plus 2 is 5, so it'll be 5/3, divided by, and 5/6 is already there. Right, we're then going to get our fraction ready so we can do the division. So we're going to change it, so we'll keep the first fraction the same, that's the k. We're going to flip the second one over, that's the f, and we're going to change the sign to a times. Then we're timesing the top, and we're timesing the bottom. Okay, 30/15, 30 divided by 15 is 2. So our answer is 2. I could have got that a lot quicker if I'd simplified it in the question. So we've got 5/3 times 6/5. I could have divided top and bottom by 5, so those two divided by 5 is 1. Divided 3 and 6 by 3, so we've got 1 and 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 divided by 1 is 2. So do look out to see if you can simplify it. Right, work out 2 1/3 minus 1 2/5. Leave your answer as a mixed number. This question, a very similar question came up last year. A lot of students missed that bit of the question and missed out on a mark. So we've got 2 1/3 take away 1 2/5. So you've got two different ways of doing it. I'll go through both methods. So 2 1/3 I could write as an improper fraction. So 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. So 7/3. Take away 1 times 5 is 5, plus 2 is 7, so 7/5. Change them to the same denominator, so my lowest common multiple of 3 and 5 is 15. I've times that by 5, so I've got 35. I've times that by 3, so I've got 21. 35 take away 21 is 14/15. And we've got our final answer. The alternative method would be to deal with the big number, the main numbers first. So 2 take away 1 is 1. Then do 1/3 take away 2/5. So we've got to change those into 15ths again. I've times that by 5, so I've got 5/15. I've times that by 3, so I've got 6/15. So I've got minus 1/15. So I've got 1 take away 1/15. That again equals 14/15. So either way we get the same answer. Sometimes this method can save some errors because these numbers can get very big, but likewise if you've got the minus there, that can make this one a bit trickier. So it's down to personal preference. Right, number 10. So in the diagram, angle ACB is 90 degrees. So ACB, that's this angle here. Angle A, the length of AC, is 4 centimeters. So I'm going to write that down. The length of BC is 3 centimeters. Again, if it's not on the diagram, I'm going to write it down. And the ratio of AP to PB is 3 to 2. Find the length of BP. Okay, so if we just redraw this triangle, okay, we've got 4, 3. If I've got a right angle triangle, I know that I can use Pythagoras to find out this side. Okay, it's a hypotenuse, so I'm adding. So we've got 4 squared plus 3 squared will equal x squared. So we've got 16 plus 9 equals x squared. 25 equals x squared. So x equals 5. So that BA, that entire length there, is 5 centimeters. Okay, we then get told that that's split in the ratio 3 to 2. Now that's worked out quite nicely in this instance because that adds up to 5. So that must mean that that's 3 centimeters and that's 2 centimeters. If that hadn't happened, we would need to divide that number into that ratio. So that would be where you do the 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1, and then timesing each of those numbers by the 1. So obviously that's where we get the 3 and 2. just double checking, it asks for the length of BP, so I'm just going to make sure I write that clearly. So BP equals 2 centimeters. Okay, solve the simultaneous equation. So in this case, I'm going to try and get the y's the same, but I will also go through it if you got the x's the same. Okay, so if we call that number 1 and that number 2, if I want the y coefficient to be the same, I'm going to times that by 3. Okay, so if I times that by 3, I end up with 12x plus 3y equals 30. Okay, so we've got a minus 3y and a plus 3y, so we've got different signs, so that means we're adding. So remember, if it's the same sign you subtract, different signs we're adding. So if we add those together, we've got 14x minus 3y add 3y is nothing, and 19 add 30 is 49. Now I'm doing that division, so we've got 49 divided by 14. If I divide both of those by 7, I'm going to get 7 over 2. So I can leave it like that, or I know some people prefer to write it as a decimal, so 3.5. Then I'm going to substitute that in and work out what y is. So if I substitute that into the first one, we've got 4 times 3.5 plus y equals 10. 4 times 3.5, so if I double 3.5, that's 7. Double it again, that's 14. So we've got 14 plus y equals 10. So y equals minus 4 if I subtract that 14. So we've got 3.5 and minus 4 is my final answer. I could double check that, and if you've got time in the exam, it's always worth doing. So we've got 2 times 3.5, take away 3 times minus 4. So we've got 7, take away minus 12. If I'm taking away a minus, that's the same as adding. So 7 plus 12 is 19, which is what we were looking for. Okay. Right. I did say I'd show the alternative method. So if we've got 4x plus y equals 10, if I then times that second equation by 2, I get 4x minus 6y equals 38. Then we're going to subtract them because the 4x and the 4x, they're the same sign. So if I subtract them, I'm going to do y take away minus 6y, so that's going to give me 7y, and 10 take away 38 is going to give me minus 28. If I then divide by 7, I get y equals minus 4. From there we've got 4x plus minus 4 equals 10. If I move the 4 across, adding it, we've got 4x equals 14. Divide by 4, we get x equals 3.5 as well. Okay, so we could use either method, but it was probably easier there to get the y's the same, and I'd always try and do that first rather than getting the x's.